On April 12th, 15th, the Ukrainian World Congress held a summit in Bucharest, drawing over 200 leaders and representatives from Ukrainian communities across 55 countries and 5 continents. The objective of the summit was to develop strategies that would enhance support for Ukraine and safeguard its interests amid unparalleled security and existential threats. Hi, Ihor.
Hi.
I appreciate you agreeing to talk with us this afternoon and share some details about your recent trip to the Ukrainian World Congress Summit that took place in Bucharest. The work you do with your organization is truly important, and I'm sure the community here would love to know more about the situation in Ukraine from you directly.
Yeah, I'm glad to speak with you.
Thank you so much. So tell us a bit, how was your trip and your overall experience during the event?
These kind of conferences are very intense. There's a lot of people, a lot of new people to meet, which is nice after COVID that you get to meet people in person. I've been going to these for 5 to 6 years, so some familiar faces, some kind of old friends from places, and then lots and lots of new people, and a really intense, busy program. So a lot to absorb and process, but really a worthwhile, energetic kind of conference.
Sounds really amazing. Could you guide us through your days at the summit? So what was the schedule like, and what were the key sessions or discussions you participated in?
So the summit in Bucharest was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. There was a lot of breaking up the 200 delegates into smaller sessions to talk about education, advocacy, community development, helping Ukraine both militarily, humanitarian. There was a lot of speakers who were experts or leaders who were working in those topics in Ukraine or in other places. So there was a lot of opportunity to hear from people, but also to ask questions, to learn, and to sort of think about how we can apply those things that they've done to Canada, or in the case of our presentations from Canada, sharing what we've done with other countries and getting feedback on it.
Those sound like really busy days. What other countries were invited to send their representatives to the summit?
Oh, all of them.
Oh, okay.
There was everybody from Australia, Argentina. I think every country in Europe had people there. There were like 20 people from Spain, 20 people from Italy. There were South Africa, Dubai, United Arab Emirates, Australia, Brazil. So literally every country, as you said, over 50 countries.
Oh, so many. Did you have a chance to maybe connect with some of them and discuss something?
Yeah, I mean, so what we did these panels. So I was on a panel on advocacy and working with governments. So our panel was Argentina, Canada, Estonia, France, and Denmark. So we sat sort of like this, on a stage, and we gave a quick presentation about the work we've been doing for the last 2 years. So we learned, from everybody, and then we had discussion questions about sort of best practices, what worked best, what didn't work best, and then there were kind of questions from the audience as well. A lot of people wanted to tell about the really successful stuff they've been doing. So Denmark, Australia, huge demonstrations, similar to what we've seen in Canada, a lot of government advocacy. So I would say it was a very positive atmosphere in the sense of everybody's been working hard, and everybody's been kind of talking to every politician and every kind of citizen of their country they can. So there was a lot of that. And then once the sessions ended, of course, over a coffee or a breakfast, you get to sort of meet individuals. And it was actually really good to meet. I met a lot of Canadians who I've never known before. There were people there from Saskatoon and Edmonton and Toronto, about 20 Canadians, and mostly people who I've never met before because they're new in their leadership role. So that was very good as well.
Amazing. So it sounds like a really good opportunity to kind of connect with everyone and share the experiences that you had. Were there any exciting projects or innovative ideas brought up in the conversations aimed to tackle the challenges our community is going through here?
The big special guest was Mariana Betsa, who's the Ukrainian ambassador for displaced persons. So she was there. She spoke several times throughout the weekend and gave her sort of official, the big project being sort of the situation of displaced Ukrainians, mostly in Europe, but also in Canada. So we heard, her very realistic assessment that, obviously right now it's very difficult to imagine millions of people coming back in terms of the safety, the economy, the situation with their jobs or their schools, with just the general electricity situation. So she was very good, and I think it was the first time she'd met all of these community leaders, and so the commitment was to come and speak with us in our countries and talk about the Ukrainian plan, and she's developing the Ukrainian plan to help people return eventually, when it's safe, when the war ends. So that's, I think, the big question on the horizon, because these communities in Europe are mostly new, right? These are people who, there's I think 7 to 8 million Ukrainians who now are living in Europe 2 years, 3 years. So we heard from places like Malta and Finland and Iceland and not places where there have ever been communities before, and they're trying to figure out how do they stay? Do they stay in these places longer? Do they go back? What their situation will be. So that was a lot of it. There was also there were some veterans and paramedics from Ukraine who came and presented about the work that they're doing, and there were some really great presentations about the important work that medics are doing as sort of frontline saving lives. And actually, really interestingly, there was a doctor from Brazil who, the Albert Einstein Hospital in Sao Paulo is like doing prosthesis work in Ukraine. They're like a world leader on prosthesis. So he was there to talk about this project. It's like a $20 million project that very randomly from Brazil, they decided to help Ukrainians.
Wow, those sound like really important projects to discuss, and we are grateful for your work there. I saw on UCC Facebook page that you were a part of the delegation that met with President Zelenskyy.
Yes.
Could you share some insight from that meeting?
Yeah, so that was when you asked me about the schedule. I missed the Friday of the meeting because we were driving back, and we drove to Ukraine from Bucharest, which is almost a whole day drive, and then back on Thursday, Friday. So there was an international delegation, about 12 people from, again, Argentina, Denmark, Australia, Canada, United States, I think that's everybody, Brazil. And so we drove to Chernivtsi, where President Zelenskyy was speaking to the Mayors Forum, Ukrainian Mayors Forum. A short meeting, but an important meeting. I think that his main message for us was he wants us, kind of as a global Ukrainian community, to keep connecting with newcomers on their Ukrainian identity. So he was worried that people, aren't necessarily connecting into Ukrainian schools or youth organizations or cultural groups, so they don't assimilate into the countries where they've gone. So kind of building on that, and also media work. I mean, he was sort of just saying that, our voice as a community in mainstream Canadian, Australian, Brazilian media is really important as citizens of those countries to really push them for more weapons and assistance for Ukraine. So that was the main message, but he was I think impressed to see that there was a delegation from kind of world leadership there, and he invited us to come to Ukraine for our next meeting.
Yeah, that would be wonderful, honestly. Reflecting on the overall experience of the summit, what are the key insights you returned to Canada with?
I think the key insights too, everyone is dealing with the same issues, whether you're in Europe or Australia or Canada. We all have this really determined work to support Ukraine. It's sort of an advocacy and government relations, and we're all pushing on all the politicians in our countries. So it was good to hear that we're not, sometimes you feel like we're the only ones doing this because you don't see or hear what other people are doing. So everyone is working hard, using very similar techniques, again, mass rallies, petitions, letters, media pressure, all of that. So that was good, but also kind of, I think, a re-energizing to get some new ideas and to get some new contacts and some insights on how we can refresh a bit of that, because it's been going for 2 years and it's a lot. And I think we also, as Canadians, we had a lot of questions on how do we share our insights on building community. Our community's been here for 130 years, as this plaque says, and these communities in Europe are 2 years old, right? 2-3 years old. So there was a lot of questions for us on how do you build Ukrainian schools and credit unions, and how does how does community sort of finance itself, and how do you deal with kind of a longer term life in a country as opposed to kind of just temporary. So that we had a lot of people from Canada that were able to talk about that, and United States and Brazil also sort of have that older diaspora kind of insight. So that was really good. And then finally, my third thing would be we really learned about the Romanian Ukrainian community. So they are indigenous. They're not immigrants to Romania. These are people from Bucharest and other regions who are ancestrally Ukrainci. So the Ukrainian community in Romania is very well organized, very motivated. They have schools and advocacy and lots of supports for refugees. So it was really good to meet them.
That sounds like a true synergy, and I think that's the right environment to really brainstorm new ideas. How do you envision the outcomes of the summit influencing the future direction and priorities of your organization specifically in supporting Ukraine and its victory?
I think there is a roadmap kind of key points from all these presentations that has been shared. I think it was a really good time for all these leaders, to put their heads together and again, sort of see, are we going in the right direction? And as you said, what is Ukraine asking for, which was, from President Zelensky's direct, more weapons, win the war, and then we'll rebuild and have a strategy for return of people afterwards. So I think it was a really good check-in with people, especially, not to do it in a virtual format, but to actually, hear from one another that we're working in the right direction for the right goal. And I think we're going to wait to see sort of what the World Congress puts together as key points. There are some roadmaps ahead. So the NATO summit, the Ukrainian Peace Summit in June, NATO summits in July. These are big international events that Zelenskyy mentioned, and that we will all be talking to our politicians in Canada or wherever about attending and sort of pursuing the Ukrainian goal there.
Sure. So what were the key takeaways regarding the role of Ukrainian diaspora communities in supporting Ukraine's defense and advocating for its interests on the global stage?
I think the key takeaway is that, as President Zelenskyy sees it, we're an important voice to our own governments as citizens of our countries, of our respective countries. We can speak about the history of the Russian colonization of Ukraine. We can speak to the contemporary issues that are so mining or demining, the civilian attacks, the nuclear attacks, the ecological damage. So he really was offering us resources in terms of what the scope of the war has meant for Ukraine, to be able to speak to our own media in our own languages, right? Danish, French, Ukrainian, German, whatever, Dutch. So I think it's a powerful advocacy army almost, for Ukraine, especially in Europe. I think where these populations now are very large and very well established. Like, to have 1 million Ukrainians in Italy is a really big number of people. And I think, like in Canada, where Ukrainian life is kind of, part of the mainstream Canadian life in a way, it's going to become a change in some of these European countries, that they're going to see more of a Ukrainian community very visible.
Definitely. A lot of Ukrainians are there now, and it's important for them to feel connected and supported. One more question for you. So can you provide an example of successful community-led initiatives or grassroots movements highlighted during the summit, and how do you envision these efforts contributing to ongoing community engagement and support for Ukraine?
Yeah, I'll say there's United with Ukraine is the initiative. My friend Andriy Potichny, who's a Ukrainian Canadian, has been running for 2 years. He's based in Kyiv. So they have been raising money for drones, for bulletproof vests, for armored vehicles, non-lethal armored vehicles, but they've been buying trucks and tanks and all sorts of equipment. So they gave a really good presentation. They thanked all the many donors, but really talked about what they need to do next, which is more of these trucks, more of these tanks, more training for doctors and paramedics, They really talked a lot about with these paramedics from Ukraine that they brought, that the training that they've received from Canadian forces or from Western doctors has really helped save lives in the field. They had a lot of charts up about sort of what the fatality rate kind of used to be, you know, before they received this training, and what they can do now in terms of life-saving equipment that's been brought there, but also the techniques, the training that they've learned on how to save lives and really, you know, help these people become productive veterans, whether it's through prosthesis or through sort of a psychological training program. So that was really, the United with Ukraine piece was very impactful, and it continues obviously to be a huge need and a really practical way people can make a difference.
Truly impressive. I believe that it's important that these events happen and that people representing the communities go share ideas, share experiences, and get to brainstorm better ways to support Ukraine and support communities within the countries. Thank you so much for giving the interview and sharing your key insights and your ideas from the summit. I hope that next couple months will be very fruitful for you and for the organization and community here in Canada.
Great to talk to you, and yeah, we're always proud to be working with the global community, sharing what we have in terms of Canadian resources and examples, but also, as you said, learning from our new communities and taking that energy and those key messages out to keep fighting for Ukraine.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Дякую.